ultimately to Agnes Sanford. And I think the biggest question that Christians ought to ask is, how did all this occult stuff come into the church to start with? And where was the discernment?
That's exactly it. We're going to have to deal with that. But what's the primary idea behind inner healing?
Well, according to Jane Gumprecht's book, and I've got primary source material myself. I have Agnes Sanford's books in
And what do you call that library?
my heresy library, which I use for researching for these articles. And she has her story written up in one of her books, and she believes in the pre-existence of souls. And she had an out-of-body experience where she went back before her birth. And in this experience, Jesus asked her to come into the world. This is before she was born, and help people find healing. So she agreed to this before she was born.
Yep.
And came into the world. And she was a very troubled person and had a lot of sorrows and a lot of disillusionment. And so this idea that she had agreed to come into this world to go through all this stuff to help people get healed before she was born helped her find some purpose or meaning in life.
Oh, man.
According to her own biography. So this book called Sealed Orders, where this is found. Now, here's the amazement. These books written by this occultist, Agnes Sanford, are being sold by Christian publishers and brought into the church and started a whole movement within the church. And the lack of discernment is astonishing.
Well, I think you had like 5 areas that sound really kind of weird, but the inner child was part of it, the pristine inner child.
Yes.
And there were a few other concepts that, man, where'd they come from? I think the unconscious mind, that would be Carl Jung.
Yeah, I think that if you dig around in this, and I've done a lot of research, and I've written papers about Christian divination and some of this stuff, Carl Jung's name comes up again and again and again. He heavily influenced Morton Kelsey, who wrote many books about this. Kelsey is quoted by these other authors, and Sanford got her stuff from Jung, and Carl Jung was an occultist himself. He had a spirit guide by the name of Philemon.
Of all names.
And he's even got drawings in one of his books of what this Philemon looked like.
Wow.
And he believed in the cosmic unconscious. So in other words, there's this pool of experiences and memories that go beyond the individual. So you have the idea of the interconnectedness of souls.
Okay, and that's that collective unconscious.
Yeah, the
also?
collective unconscious,
Yeah.
which, by the way, is what New Agers believe in.
Yes.
And this came into the church through people like Morton Kelsey and Agnes Sanford.
Where'd the repressed memories idea come in? Because that's going to be part of what we talk about.
Well, if you go into Jung's theories, the material that may be causing people emotional problems could even have come from elsewhere, outside of the person.
Okay.
Within this unconscious that's hooked up to the rest of the world out there, you may have all sort of things that are under the surface.
There's also the repressed memories bit, and then we also went to interpretations of first memory events, and you talked about that in the Theophostics discussions. Right?
Yes, and they're all based on the same idea that somehow there's material inside of us in this unconscious, and that this material is causing us problems now, and that the material needs to be accessed by some means, because if it's in this unconscious, then we don't know what it is. All right. And so techniques are developed to access the unconscious mind, to uncover the material in there, to bring it out into the open, and then to somehow heal this material. Now, all of this is extremely tenuous, because one of the things that happens is that people are starting to access repressed memories and remember things that actually turns out never even happened. And there have been lawsuits about that.
Okay. What does the Bible say about all this?
It doesn't say anything about it. Does the Bible teach there's an unconscious mind? No, it's a psychological theory. Does the Bible teach that memories have to be healed? No, it's a psychological theory. Does the Bible teach some of the techniques that they use to access this unconscious mind, like hypnosis or this random association, or the theophostic version where you try to get people to re-experience the pain and try to identify whatever that first memory event was? There's all kinds of these things. None of this is in the Bible. None of it. It's all concocted by people in the 20th century. It was unheard of before the 20th century, by the way.
Ouch.
And when you go back and research this, like this Jane Gumprecht did in such a fabulous way, you find out it comes from the occult.
Boy. Okay, well, we have to outline what are we going to be covering in the next, I don't know if this is going to take 1, 2, or 3 sessions, but as long as it takes us, all right? Could you outline for us what we're going to cover?
Well, we're going to deal with some of these false premises that we've been talking about.
All right.
Okay. And then I think we should explore a little more, as we mentioned, Hebrews and the whole idea of the cleansing of the conscience. I think that this thing is getting us off track from what our real problem is.
I think you've talked about the fact that should be sanctification, not about memories.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then we're going to talk about some of these teachings and how they've harmed people, some of the damage that's been done, terrible damage to people in the name of Christ, and how God actually uses everything for those who are redeemed for our good. We shouldn't look at our memories as some sickness that somehow has to find a cure, but as a part of what all things will work together for good for those who love God and are called according to his purpose. So if we begin to see things from a biblical perspective, it'll keep us from getting into these false teachings that are going to put us into bondage.
Now, your first major in the paper, your first major heading was false premises of memory healing theories. So under that concept, let's talk about a few things. What's the basis for memory healing theories?
Well, the theory is that memories must be identified, accessed, and manipulated in some way for a Christian to find healing.
Okay, give us biblical proof for that.
Well, there isn't any.
There's no biblical proof. Okay.
No.
What do they base it on?
Well, Christ and his apostles didn't know about any such thing as healing of memories.
No, we're having a Mark study in our house just on what he did teach, and that hasn't come up yet.
It hasn't come up. I've been teaching through the Bible for 30 years, and I haven't found it there yet. Now,
okay, so it's anecdotal.
Yeah, people come and say that they're Christians. They've tried what the Bible teaches, like Bible study, prayer, worship service, and fellowship, and these things don't work. It's amazing how, if you read enough of these books, and I've been reading them off and on for 20 years, I've got a whole shelf of them, of these false inner healing books in my heresy library, and some of them are really thick. John and Paula Sanford have 2 huge, thick books covering everything you can imagine, none of it biblical, but what causes this problem and what causes this problem, and they're going to analyze the human heart and go in there and do some sort of heart surgery to fix all these problems. And it's unbelievable how extensive this material gets. But the fact is, there's no biblical ground whatsoever. The Bible never identifies our memories as our problem.
What do they mean by none of this works?
They all say that Christianity is failing to heal people.
Oh, okay.
And that's what Agnes Sanford believed.
Okay.
Let's just take Ed Smith and his theophostic thing that's getting into so many churches. His book starts out by giving anecdotal evidence that Christianity doesn't work. People tried prayer, that doesn't work. They tried Bible study, that doesn't work. They went to church, they did the things the Bible says to do, it doesn't work. So what's the problem? Well, they have these memory problems, first memory events, and somebody has to get in there and find out this information and do something about it. So I think we ought to be very suspicious of any teaching that starts out by telling us that what the Bible says doesn't work.
Okay, that's our first flag. Let's go after this one, though. How do they start? I mean, if you're talking about memories are the key, they must have to go back into it.
Well, you can talk to people. I'm not saying people don't have painful memories. And people have been abused. People have been mistreated by their parents. People have gone through divorce.
It's real.
Well, everybody's been abused by somebody. You can't grow up around other kids and not have somebody make fun of you.
Or drive a car from here to the next corner. Really?
There's always something.
There's always something in the way.
Exactly. So you create a universal need for this once you teach these theories, that every human being is going to need this ministry because everybody's had some memory they don't like because we live in a fallen world. Okay? So the proof that you need the ministry is that you have a memory that's unhappy. Now, if you say you don't have too many of those, then they'll suggest that you need to recover forgotten memories because there's got to be something causing me emotional pain. See, the sickness that they claim we need to be healed of is emotional pain.
Ah, okay.
in fact, Ed Smith in his theophostic version of